Your brain detects that there's a lack of safety. And what does that do? Your brain detects that there's a lack of safety. And what does that do? It arouses the nervous system, turns on the amygdala, and then the amygdala does step 2, mobilization. It activates the sympathetic nervous system so that you can go into fight or flight. Normal. We want that to happen. And in doing that, in turning on the amygdala, it shuts down the prefrontal cortex, your thinking, rational mind. So that brings me back to this slide. If you've dropped down into your limbic brain, your emotional brain, your prefrontal cortex is offline, you can't talk yourself out of it. Look, if we could talk ourselves out of the shit that we get into, we'd never need therapy. Later, I'll tell you why therapy doesn't really work. But here's the problem, right? We're really good at becoming aroused. We're really good at activating and mobilizing, but we're not so good at part 3 of the arousal cycle, which is discharge. Now, if you watch dogs in a dog park, what happens is they get in a scrap, and then they literally shake it off, don't they? We're stuck. We get very stuck as human beings. We're particularly stuck after the last 5 years. I would argue that probably there is no time greater in any of our lives when the global community has been in such a high state of fight or flight. And it's really hard to discharge. But if we don't get to the discharge, what happens? What happens when we go into fight or flight? The amygdala activates the sympathetic nervous system. We get a rush of adrenaline and cortisol. And it has a job. It activates us. It shunts blood to the arms and legs so that we can literally run or fight. It's amazing. But we want that to be really short term. And when it's not, when we get stuck in these sympathetic loops, what happens is we go into high states of inflammation. And when we have high sympathetic tone, we have low vagal tone, low parasympathetic tone. Now, what happens when we're in parasympathetic? Homeostasis, healing, is when we thrive. In fact, no healing happens in a sympathetic state. It can't. That's not the job. The job is fight or flight. It is not repair and heal. So in a perfect world, we cycle through these things. We cycle through, and each of these platforms is available to us at all times. But we kind of get stuck in these grooves where maybe we're either a more hypervigilant sympathetic person, or maybe we might even be dorsal vagal. And I'll explain what all that means in just a moment. There's this book called Your Body Keeps the Score, also by Bessel van der Kolk. I have no agreement with Bessel to get money from him for selling his books or his quotes. He talks about the science around how it is that, and when I say trauma, accept that I also just mean like stress and the complexities that we're dealing with all the time. Don't think, oh, that's not me. Every single one of you have experienced some sort of trauma in your life, and we all continue to. Right? And so what happens is when you don't get to discharge, when you're in a place where you have trauma that essentially gets stuck in your body, it gets encoded. When we say your body keeps the score, essentially what we're saying is that your body encodes that traumatic experience.